Recalling March 2022, Dmytro cannot hold back his tears. Then, in the first days of the occupation, Russian soldiers took his house, leaving the man homeless. And later, the Russians shot his acquaintances right in front of Dmytro.
There is a dormitory, 5-story building. They killed 3 people there. Leonia. I saw how Dmytro was smoking. This is what I saw. The Russians ran with assault rifles behind the dormitory. And whether a Russian soldier was afraid of that boy, the devil knows. But he killed that guy at once.
Every survivor has such stories, but people often refuse to tell them, and even more so on camera. They just don't want to recall those terrible moments. And those who agree to filming talk more about their emotions at the time of leaving the Russian occupation.
It was for the first time in my life. I am 78 years old. We were driving for 40 minutes through their checkpoints. The Russian tank was standing right in the forest. We passed that. Driving, then I look, Ukrainian flag, and it hurt so badly inside. That's how we wanted to see our flag.
That's understandable. In March, especially in the last 2 weeks, the Russian occupiers demonstrated an inhuman level of cruelty in Bucha. 420 people were shot, every fifth of those who remained in the city. The Russian invaders tortured and raped people, including minors.
Church of St. Andrew in Bucha, which to this day is covered with traces of Russian bullets and shells, has become not only a symbol of the treachery of the Russian invaders, but also the site of the largest mass burial of civilians. Almost a year ago, Ukrainian investigators removed the bodies of 117 people from here.
People were buried by the locals. The Russian occupiers blocked access to the cemetery and often did not let residents get close to the bodies. The killed were laying in the open space for weeks. For those who built the mass grave, even transporting the bodies was a big risk.
The local authorities and we deliberately decided to bury those people, at least the ones we managed to, because there were areas where we simply could not reach. And so the church became a place, albeit a temporary resting place, for those who were killed in Bucha. Of course, we hope that after the victory of Ukraine, the temple will have a memorial. It is very important for us that this is not just a place of sorrow. We will remember our relatives and friends who were killed, but it is important for us that there is at least some silver lining.
Now the Church of St. Andrew has become one of the practical places for visiting by international leaders. According to the chairman of the Verkhovna Rada Ruslan Stefanchuk, exactly at this place, politicians and world leaders understand what exactly is at stake today.
It's very difficult to explain this in textbooks. It needs to be seen and felt. As an example, when Irpin and Bucha were liberated, delegations immediately went there. First, the president and I with the parliamentarians, and a week later, the speaker of the Sejm of Poland and my good friend Tomasz Grodzki. We brought him to the place of collective burial, and he said, "I'm a professional surgeon by education. I have seen everything in my life, but the smell that I felt there, I was already confident in Ukraine. This will not give me the opportunity to go off this path."
In addition to massacres and torture, Russian soldiers were looting en masse. It was after the liberation of the Kyiv region that it became known about the widespread cases of theft of such simple household items as a washing machine, fridge, and sometimes even a toilet bowl.
Now you can find traces of Russian shelling on this wall, but the residents have already returned to the complex. They are actively rebuilding houses and in general, life goes on as usual. But just a year ago, things looked completely different.
On the 5th day after liberation from the Russian invaders, this housing complex had only destroyed walls. Right in the middle of the houses, where several dozen people still lived, the Russian troops installed MLRS. They literally hid behind a human shield. But even more than that, we were then struck by the scale of the theft.
Only in this yard they stole jewelry, computer parts and tangerines. Come on, tangerines!
Under the definition of almost every war crime, you can make a footnote. The Russian army did it in Bucha. This city became the watershed of the Russian war against Ukraine. First of all, it opened the eyes of the Ukrainians themselves. If before Bucha there were still attempts to negotiate a ceasefire with Russia, then after that it became clear to everyone that there was no one to negotiate with. Despite the proximity to the front line, in the very first days after the liberation, Bucha was visited by all the top leadership of Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky calls that day the worst since the beginning of the Russian invasion.
Bucha. Probably what I saw at the moment there when we liberated the city, it was very scary. Because what we saw that the devil is not somewhere out there. He is on earth.
Later, Bucha was visited by top representatives of the European Union and allied countries of Ukraine. It was after the discovery of the atrocities of the Russian invaders there that the approach to providing assistance from the West changed. And today, before conducting negotiations, the guests are reminded of what and whom the Ukrainians are fighting against.
The world was horrified to see that a year ago. Innocent civilians were killed in Bucha. As I stand here today, I do feel very angry for all the Russian atrocities. On behalf of the citizens of Japan, I would like to express my sincere condolences to all the victims and wounded.
Today, a year after the liberation, the city is gradually recovering. Life in it is already in many ways reminiscent of the one that was before the Russian invasion. But older buildings can be rebuilt, people's lives and health cannot be restored. And Ukrainians will never forget or forgive the Russian occupiers for their crimes in Bucha and other cities of our country. Reported by Diana Kolesnik, Danilo Kobza, Yuri Shulhan, UATV News.